Hello husbands and fathers. Today's video is a bit different. It's not about your family role directly, but more a social commentary on what Trump's election means for our work here. Progressitis is a term I use to describe a cultural bug, a set of ideas and behaviors that disrupt the social fabric that holds us together. Some call it progressive politics, but I see it as a social disease for the friction and disharmony it creates. In this video, we'll put this bug under the microscope to understand how it operates and how it impacts us all. Let's explore how progressitis works and the effect it has on our lives. Progressitis is the thread that connects attacks on masculinity, recent campus demonstrations following October 7, and the US election. It's a dysfunctional pattern of thinking and behavior that affects many areas of our life: family, work relationships, education, politics, and media. Let's break it down. To understand progressitis, let's examine its core beliefs. Society is defined by power dynamics. You're either dominant or submissive, oppressor or oppressed. The victims and the weak are inherently right and deserve empathy and support. Social justice ideals matter more than truth, facts, and science. Reality is subjective and is shaped by language. Change the language and you change the reality. Now let's move from ideas to action and look at some of the methods used by progressitis. Enforcing ideology over reality and science. Policing thought, restricting free speech, and bullying those who offer competing perspectives. Promoting educational material that alarm many parents. Restructuring legal system in ways that compromise the rights of family men. Undermining established norms and institutions without adequate replacement, prioritizing group identity over individual merit, which divides communities, fostering resentment towards dominant groups and nations, starting with white men, imposing diversity, equity, and inclusion on organizations, often in rigid and divisive ways, distorting the narrative of Western civilization, its achievements and values. Now let's consider the impact of this bug. The ideas of social justice are great, but progressitis distorts them and often causes more harm than good. The bug leaves little room for complexity or nuance. Righteousness creates anger over injustice and serves as a call to action against others. In family life and gender relations, progressitis has hijacked the good old idea of feminism, of gender equality, and turned it into a divisive mentality of us versus them. This shift has led to widespread attacks on masculinity, further marginalizing many men who struggle with poor health, isolation, and mental health issues. Masculinity and gender relations have become a key target of progressitis. The belief is that the gender imbalance of power is the root cause of all other power imbalances. And this is how you fix this imbalance. Accept the gender role is conditioned by society and has nothing to do with your hormones, genes, or evolutionary instinct. It is all in your mind. Now language becomes the tool to reshape reality, cancel binary sex, blur boundaries, and erase power imbalances. One of the most influential books in the field of gender studies, Masculinities, presents these ideas and ties masculine traits to patriarchy and male dominance. The strange idea in this book made me curious about the author, sociology professor at Sydney University, Raewyn Connell. I just wanted to know if she raised kids. Interestingly, she transitioned from male to female. Hang on, didn't she say it's all in the mind? Why change your body instead of simply changing your beliefs? Contrast this with Carol Hooven, a Harvard biologist who taught that biological sex is binary. After trans activists and DEI officials gave her hell, and without support from her university, she resigned. In 2018, Progressitis reached a high point when it inflamed the American Psychological Association, a hugely influential body among practitioners, educators, and policymakers. The APA released professional guidelines on how to work with boys and men. They describe traditional masculinity as psychologically harmful and encourage psychologists to help us heal from that. Do you wonder what they mean by traditional? Here are some of the traits they added to this harmful basket: emotional stoicism, adventure, self-reliance, competitiveness, risk-taking, and not showing vulnerability. Well, let me confess, I suffer from all of the above. These shameful guidelines shocked many professionals, men and women, and sparked swift backlash. Consider the effect of such messages on how boys and men are treated in school, workplace, legal system, and even their families. The barbaric attack on October 7th triggered campus demonstrations that brought to light the intensity and madness of Progressitis. Toxic ideologies often attract each other. Not surprisingly, the epicenter of the madness has been in the academia, the breeding ground of Progressitis. To illustrate, here is a clip of the leaders where you can see the bug in action.
Ms. McGill, at Penn, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's rules or code of conduct? Yes or no?
If the speech turns into conduct, it can be harassment, yes.
I am asking specifically calling for the genocide of Jews. Does that constitute bullying or harassment?
If it is directed and severe or pervasive, it is harassment.
So the answer is yes.
It is a context-dependent decision, Congresswoman.
It's a context-dependent decision. That's your testimony today. Calling for the genocide of Jews is depending upon the context. That is not bullying or harassment. This is the easiest question to answer yes, Ms. McGill. So is your testimony that you will not answer yes?
If the
yes or no?
If the speech becomes conduct, it can be harassment, yes.
Conduct meaning committing the act of genocide? The speech is not harassment? This is unacceptable, Ms. McGill. I'm going to give you one more opportunity for the world to see your answer. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's code of conduct when it comes to bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be harassment.
The answer is yes. And Dr. Gay, at Harvard, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
What's the context?
Targeted as an individual, targeted at an individual.
It's targeted at Jewish students, Jewish individuals. Do you understand your testimony is dehumanizing them? So the answer is yes, that calling for the genocide of Jews violates Harvard Code of Conduct, correct?
Again, it depends on the context.
It does not depend on the context. The answer is yes, and this is why you should resign. These are unacceptable answers across the board.
And to balance it, let me show you one response from a courageous journalist, Erin Molan, here in Australia.
Every single person who failed the most basic test of moral clarity on October 7. Killing kids? Oh, complicated. Raping women? What's the context? Burning people alive? Resistance? all those who joined a movement that glorified death, who marched in our streets waving their flags and chanting for more. Where did it all go so wrong?
The uproar led to the resignation of some university leaders, but it also revealed the depth of the problem. The US election results suggest there is more reckoning to come. Many experts believe that Trump's election was a reaction to Progressitis. I personally wouldn't vote for him. His character and judgment concern me. However, I can understand why so many Americans saw him as a force who could counter this cultural bug. The events since October 7th have shown how deeply Progressitis has spread through institutions, and many Americans seem ready to push back. The hope is that this administration will return our university to their original purpose, pursuing truth and science, not ideology. We should all care because this is where our next generation of leaders, policymakers, and professionals get educated. When truth and science prevail, we find ourselves back on the path to wisdom, the path of balance, open dialogue, and common ground. Growth then becomes a smooth and natural process. I wish you wise husbandhood.